This episode is part 4 of my video series, Scenery Experiments. In today's episode, we are going to go back to the beginning of my current immersion into model railroading and look at an overview of the last 9 months from the vision to reality of my first T-Trak module build. Welcome to Humanity Junction, where the city intersects with humans. I got back into model railroading in December of 2019 after not really participating much in the hobby since the late 80s. My girlfriend and partner wanted a Christmas tree this year, and I asked if I could put a model train around it. At this point, I mostly had HO equipment, which I knew would be too large for our space. So after some research, I determined I could use N-scale, 11-inch radius track, and make a loop that would easily fit on our 27-inch round kitchen table. On December 8th of 2019, I purchased a Bachmann Happy Holidays Brill trolley that would be the star of the layout. At this point, I did not know about digital command control, so everything was DC. Then I started looking around on YouTube and found channels such as Luke Talon and many others. I will post links to any channels that I mentioned during this video in the description below. With all the inspiration and how-to videos I was watching on YouTube, I wanted to do more than just have a loop of track on the table. I wanted to create a small diorama with scenery and a river. I used the Märklin of Sweden tissue and glue method of water as I did not want to pour epoxy in my apartment. I had so much fun building the diorama for Christmas. This was the first creative project that I had completed for myself in a really long time. There were layers upon layers of details that I was able to add, and I really enjoyed the process. After all of the Christmas fun, I wanted to design another layout. Due to the limited space available that I had, the most common recommended suggestion for a layout was a shelf switching layout. I found a design online and I modified it to fit the dimensions of a shelf from a local hardware store. While the shelf layout was really interesting, once I had the track laid, I realized that I really wanted a layout that I could run trains. Model rail fanning and run-bys are an aspect of the hobby that I really enjoy. What I was working on with the design and was trying to figure out was whether I could create something more intricate than a loop, but still take up minimal space. I live in a one-bedroom apartment with very minimal room for projects. I came up with this two-loop design with a single switch. Neither of the loops were connected, but the switch would allow me to use the shelf layout and not only run trains, but also do some operations. I figured that I could build a small hill and put some structures on top while the lower loop would run through the tunnel. I tried running some of my passenger trains on the double loop layout, but I was very limited on the number of cars that I could run without derailments. I really wanted to be able to run longer trains. The double loop layout might still become 2020's holiday project. I started playing around in model railroading CAD programs with creating multiple shelf layouts that I could connect together to create a larger layout. I was starting to think that something modular would be my solution. This is a design that utilized the shelf layout as well as adding a lot more space for running. All of the shelves were standard wooden shelves that I could purchase at the local hardware store. I was trying to stick with benchwork that would not require any woodworking. And since at this point, all of the planning that I was doing was digital, I just kept designing and designing. Due to my first 2 unsuccessful starts, I was spending more time planning before I went back to building. I really wanted a layout based in the New York region where the tracks would be owned by New York Central, but where the Circus and Carnival would come to town. So I wanted enough track to park a New York Central freight train, a Circus train, and a Carnival train, along with enough scenic areas to have a small upstate New York town, a Circus area with a big top tent, and a Carnival area with a midway and games. I just kept packing in more and more track and ideas until I started watching Peter Lloyd Lee's layout design videos. I was still trying to build a 4-shelf layout that would be modular, and I realized that I had so much track that I had not left any room for scenery. And then I learned about some different modular standards. My next design was based around N-Trak Modular standards. I designed 3 modules that could be set up either individually or in different combinations. The idea was that one section would be the circus area, one section would be the carnival area, and another section would be the yard for all the rolling stock. I could also make the yard bigger if needed by building another yard section to insert into the middle. By building an N-Trak layout, I could go to local area shows and connect up to other N-Trak modelers for running the trains. There is a modular standard that is working towards being more prototypical called Fremo, but in my area I saw a lot more N-Trak at shows. I even printed out the N-Trak layout I designed in full scale and laid out all of my rolling stock to see if I had enough yard tracks. Having the 12-foot by 2-foot piece of paper on the floor in my apartment, I started to realize that there was no way that I had the space to build one of these modules, let alone all three. At the Amherst train show in January, I met the Brooklyn N-Trak Club and I attended their February meeting. At this meeting, I learned that while they bring N-Trak modules to shows, that at the meetings they run trains on T-Trak modules. The T-Trak modules are smaller and more portable and set up on top of tables. It was at this meeting that I realized that I needed to rethink all of my plans and that building a T-Trak module would be a good option. I will admit that this was somewhat of a disappointing discovery. I was seeing some really amazing private layouts in basements and lofts, but it became apparent pretty quickly that my 50-inch by 30-inch desktop that I also used for work was going to be the space that I had available for my model trains workshop and layout. With a T-Trak module, I could still join a club and I could still run trains at meetings and at shows. While I am still dreaming of a big basement layout, I'm going to hone my modeling skills with T-Trak modules. In hindsight, this was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. It is now 6 months after I designed the T-Trak module I wanted to build, and I have an electrically and scenically complete module. If I had attempted anything bigger, I would not have progressed as quickly and learned as much in such a short amount of time. Model railroaders talk about their layout builds taking 5 to 10 years, not 5 to 10 months. I'm very happy that I started working with such a small section. Here is my original T-Trak module design. The track planning software that I've been using is AnyRail 6. I've tried a few others, but this software has been a good balance between ease of use and a lot of features. Ron Marsh just did a video on using AnyRail 6. Once again, even using the dimensions of all of my plan structures, I still put too many elements onto the module. In the final design, I had to remove the abandoned track behind the Merchant's Row, the engine house at the end of the spur, and the fourth platform in front of the depot. I was still able to fit a lot of the elements onto my very small module. For the rest of this video, I'm going to talk about the order of operations that I used when building this module. In a future video, I will go into more details on each step and what worked and what did not. After building the T-Trak module that I purchased from CMR Products, I moved on to building all of the structures. Once all of the structures were built, I was able to confirm the location of all of the main elements. Next, I attached all of the track and cut holes in the modules for the structures. I knew that I would be lighting up all the structures, and I thought that cutting holes in the base would be a good way to access the insides. I will talk a lot more about this decision in the next video. While laying the track, I did the majority of the electronics on the module. I wired in the switches behind the background apartment building and the block detection. The electronics are more complicated than needing for a T-Trak module, but I wanted to learn what I could about DCC as it was still very new to me. After the track was installed and I could run a train, I glued down all of the structures and used Woodland Scenic's rock molds and Sculptamold to contour the surface of the module. I also added the inkjet printed retaining wall to the front face of the module and started on some of the lighting. It was at this point that I started realizing that attaching the structures so early in the process was not a good idea. I was focusing on the electronics on the module and not the overall build process. I was focused on the parts of the build that came easy to me and I liked working on. I really liked the electrical and electronics portion, and the scenery made me nervous. Completing the scenery after securing the structures created access issues when trying to add the scenery later. The rest of the build process was documented in the first 3 parts of this series, so I'm not going to go into further details in this video. When I started this project, I was completely new at building any amount of scenery and electronics on a model railroading layout of any size. The order of operations really affected my ability to efficiently work on certain aspects of this project. While experience with each step is important, Learning which step to do in which order also comes with experience. In the next episode, I'm going to talk in more detail about the order of operations, how they affected my build, and what I would do differently in the future. Thank you for watching. Please leave any comments or questions below, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe and select the bell icon to receive notifications. Thanks again, and have a great day.